Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I know we have people joining across the globe, which is very exciting for us. And welcome to another edition of DLT Labs Business Cast. This is our fifth business cast. And today, you may, for those who have seen our business cast before, recognize my face. However, we're joined by Jeff Ashcroft as well. He's our AVP of Sales, really focusing on freight. And today, both Jeff and I are going to talk a little bit about leveraging blockchain, specifically in the freight industry. So we have a really exciting presentation. We welcome all different types of questions. I'll hand it over to Jeff. Jeff, if you want to go give yourself a little bit more of an introduction, and then let's get straight into it.
Yeah, thanks, Sheldon. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Ashcroft. I've been working in the logistics and supply chain industry, I'll just say over 30 years now, and recently joined DLT Labs. However, I have been personally studying blockchain now for logistics and supply chain applications for over 7 years. So it's nothing new to me from that perspective. But over that time, I've seen many different attempts by many different parties and groups to get scale blockchain activities into place in logistics and supply chain. And it just seems like there has been difficulty in getting that traction. And the recent success that we've had here at DLT Labs over the last 3 years in the freight area is really what drove us to put this webinar together for you all today. And really what we're suggesting and putting forward is the supposition that the way to success within the implementation of blockchain for all the potential applications on the logistics and supply chain side is to start with freight. And we really do see that as the first step in mobilizing the industry. So the objective that we've put forth for today's discussion is to initiate rollout of a private blockchain solution for your industry. And literally you can fill that in with, wherever you are, if you're in, automotive, pharma, retail, aerospace, etc. There's, lots of industries where blockchain has the potential to be very significant. And really the first step, as you see there, is to organize and then move from there. Once you've organized, a group of folks to move forward together on these initiatives, move into a pilot scenario. And once the pilot has been completed and refined and ready to move forward, then you implement and then you're in a position to roll out. And that's really how we went forward with our initial major implementation with Walmart Canada, was to start a pilot with one carrier, which was Bison Transport. And we're now approaching 70 carriers that are operating on the system. So once you've kind of gone through those four steps, there's really four goals that are out there that need to be taken into account. And really what you're looking at is, the transparency that you're able to get with the blockchain applications, the lower freight costs that can be driven through the process, then traceability, and ultimately the ability to, in a much more effective way, capture and share the sustainability information around your supply chain. So there's lots of potential applications that folks can utilize to, a distributed ledger or blockchain for. And the real question is, which are the ones that make sense and which are the ones that you start with. But, obviously you want to go for an application that warrants the use of a blockchain or distributed ledger. And the technology really does shine when you're working in multi-party cross-enterprise use cases. And it becomes even stronger when there's certification and regulatory compliance. So as I mentioned, the whole aerospace, automotive, pharma, healthcare, and food applications that can be applied. And then once you're in that position, you are able to take advantage of tracking, tracing, and provenance are very good examples of relevant applications. And, within the luxury goods industry, I think is a very, very good application, especially when you're talking about counterfeiting and those type of issues. But, one of the areas that we've really been able to show this success is the use of smart contracts. and that is for process automation around invoicing in the freight area. Um, as well, sustainability and the ability to actually capture ESG and sustainability data as a byproduct of the process, rather than it being kind of a separate make work project, which in some cases may be accurate or inaccurate or require reconciliation. But when you're driving it right off of the immutable blockchain, it's capturing that information at source. It's obviously a much more effective application. And then last but not least, the ability to certify parties and products for trade facilitation. And that's really, a lot of people will start working with their current trading partners, but as you start to move forward, it's really an opportunity to say, okay, now I can start working with other different parties. But literally, it allows you to trust and create that trust around the new parties that you will trade with. The last point that I'll make is that private multi-enterprise blockchain is ready for use now. There's a number of analysts out there who will go nameless. One that starts with a G, and they literally have been telling folks that, hey, blockchain's not going to be ready for 10 years. And I'm like, okay, so we've been utilizing it very successfully in day-to-day operations for over 3 years now. So but the difference is a public blockchain versus a multi-enterprise private blockchain. And that really is, to me, where things need to start. And if, some people will say, well, let's wait, until the public blockchain is ready. But, the advantages and benefits are significant enough that it makes sense to go after them now. And then, once the public blockchain is ready, then you can migrate to it or bridge to it or whatever the case may be. But, really, the time to get started is now. And the last question is, where is the best place to start to ensure success? And, I those who know me know that I'm a pretty practical guy. Started my career in the operations side with Hudson's Bay, and then got into the third-party logistics area with Tibbet and Britain, and created a 20 million square foot 3PL. And literally, on the practical side, the best place to start to ensure success is starting with ROI. And, you really look for those applications that have the highest ROI potential and begin with those as a foundation. And, the thing that I always try to say is that, you pick an application where there's business sense over an application where there's just a great fit for the technology. So, blockchain and distributed ledger is great for tracking, produce, for example, and traceability, but it's pretty tough to prove the ROI on that. But if you start with an application such as freight, and you're able to then move from there up the, if you want to call it up the food chain, then you're able to layer those on and get the advantages that they can deliver. So walking through this sequentially, so, the ROI really is that foundation. And the first step are the smart contracts and invoicing for freight. And, there's roughly about a 5% ROI or, based on your freight spend, about a 5% savings opportunity that can be captured and help you to drive the entire process to add the additional layers. And, you can move from the actual smart contracts for freight into your invoicing for product. So purchasing a product, as well as the information on the products that you're managing within the supply chain. You're then in a position, now that you've got all your products on there, to start your track, trace, and provenance capabilities. And moving on from there, the sustainability and process embedded ESG data is available and can then be easily captured, because it's happening literally with every process that's taking place in the supply chain, is capturing that information on an immutable basis. And then last but not least, that certification of parties for product and trade helps you feel confident when you start moving beyond your current trading partners to work with other trading partners in other parts of the world. Okay. So one of the main reasons why freight is the best place to get started on this is that there's a lot of friction within the freight industry, and there is an opportunity to eliminate that, which is what is really creating the benefit that we're talking about. So the ROI potential, as I mentioned, is about 5% of your total freight spend currently. And, the areas where the friction is actually taking place, um, the estimates that we've seen and have had provided is on a daily basis, there's about $155 billion worth of freight invoicing that is actually in dispute, and that's across North America. So obviously a significant number and a significant opportunity. And the other is the freight payment processing. About 95% of the cost that's associated with freight processing is information. And through utilizing distributed ledger and blockchain, you basically will have all the information required to facilitate and automate that payment processing, I'll say process. And the other thing is the administration and processing around freight is estimated to be about 20% of the total cost of transportation. And last but not least, there are about 40% of total payments at any given time within freight are on a past due basis. So, significant challenges, significant friction, significant opportunities, and blockchain really is, the opportunity and the methodology to capture this and surface it, and then begin that journey that I described earlier, to get to the other applications, which may not have the same ROI, but definitely are extremely important to the overall business. So the one thing that I'll say here, and what you see here, is the typical freight invoicing process that's out there. And, if you look at the kind of freight audit and pay companies that are out there in the business today, the majority of those are really just taking this process and automating it for you. And, that's always great. But, every time that I've been involved in significant applications of technology, I try not just to automate what's currently happening. It's always a goal to try and re-engineer and improve that process by automating it. So if you look at this process, what we've done with the implementation of DL Freight is we've eliminated a number of the steps that are happening within the typical freight invoicing and contracts process. And literally, after removing those 6 steps, the new DL Freight workflow that we put into place literally allows you to capture the shipment details from the bill of lading or the tender process. The transportation of the goods occur. The carrier then agrees to the shipment details and proof of delivery via IoT. Any accessorial charges, which really cause a lot of the disputes that are out there, are added as the process is occurring and can even be approved by the shipper during that process. And then ultimately, it comes down time for that invoice to be paid, because there's a single version of the truth that's agreed by both parties that facilitates that payment. And, to punch that down to the next level, literally this is the way that we operate. So there's one invoice for every load that's happening. And on every load, we're capturing over 200 data elements for each of them. And if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that the tender contract is there and the tender has been made. And what happens is we've created a smart contract between the shipper and all of their carriers. And what happens with that freight contract is when the tender occurs, all the known information is populated into that invoice to calculate a pro forma or create a pro forma invoice for that load. And then literally that pro forma invoice moves with the load. And all the data that's being captured, whether it's from IoT devices, whether it's from EDI 214 status updates, all the available information is captured. The GPS is there. If it's a temperature controlled load, then literally all the temperature monitoring is included within that. And then, if there are accessorials and waiting times, those are being captured, and the driver can literally work with the dispatch to go back to the to the shipper and say, okay, here's this accessorial requirement for waiting time that's put onto the blockchain by the dispatch, and it goes back to the client, and literally, right from the SAP platform, an approval or reference number for that accessorial charge can be applied and put on the invoice. So when it comes time for payment, there's no reason for dispute. It's already been agreed, it's already there, and the invoice is ready to move forward. And then finally, once the proof of delivery is complete on the IoT side, the shipper is in a position where, every shipment is a line item, and at the end of it, there's a little paper airplane icon. And if they review their information there, they can literally hit that icon and the invoice is sent. So it's a very, very streamlined and very, very rapid process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shailen. He's going to actually get into describing some of the different types of freight that we've already applied the DL Freight platform to. Over to you, Shailen.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. And as you mentioned, so what I wanted to do is take some time today and talk about who's actually using the platform today and the different types of freight. So as Jeff mentioned, this platform is, and it's a blockchain-based platform, is in production and has been going on for 3 years now. And in those 3 years, we have three main groups of types of freights. We have our crowdsourced partners. So this usually sits on the direct store delivery side. As you can see in the image, there's Uber, DoorDash, etc., and them using the platform for invoicing based on specific trips that they do in an aggregated view. But all the components of how these freight types are using the platform is all the same, essentially. It's just whether we're aggregating, not aggregating, the different types of deliveries, all that being taken into consideration when looking at the platform. We also have our e-commerce, or traditional parcel carriers, so your e-commerce channel. So these are kind of like your UPSs as well. The first two are more based on specific orders, or order based, obviously. However, the third one, truckload or LTL or TL, these types of freights are more focused on a full delivery. So for example, it can contain more than one parcel. So it's kind of how you are tracking it. We can get at any granular level, to be honest, and we are doing that. So whether it's on a truck, we know exactly what's on a truck. However, the difference in terms of how we're using the platform is the crowdsourced partners or traditional parcel carriers are kind of invoicing at a particular order, whereas an LTL TL is kind of at a complete truck level. So we go to the next slide. Let's look at some of the metrics in terms of what we're doing today. So as I mentioned, on the crowdsourced side, we have a couple of different partners such as Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, Steer. They are currently all using the platform in production today. And you can see some of the numbers. So really what we started launching this out was probably about Q2, towards the end of Q2, Q3 of this year. And you can see that how many orders we're tracking in DL Freight right now. So we expect this number to slowly increase. Obviously, we're expanding it in terms of geographical regions. So we started in a little bit of a concentrated way, but now we're expanding that. And what we're expecting in the next phase with certain marketplace orders, we're going to get over 500,000 different orders tracked. So these are individual transactions, everything tracked and traced on our blockchain network. And this is really what, and we've talked about it in previous business casts as well, this is the power of how blockchain has been implemented, because it really is that network. As you have more transactions, as you have more partners coming on, retailers, whomever, auditors, it's that network of holding that information, making sure it's always available. That's exactly how blockchain has been implemented, and why it's one of, well, we feel the only technology that can do this at a scale. If we go to the next slide, so the traditional parcel carriers, we are getting started with this very, very shortly. So we are in production, however, now we're ramping up. But you can see already some of the parcel carriers that are using this: Canada Post, FedEx, UPS, Canpar, etc. So these are all different types of carriers that are already onboarded on our platform. Right now, we're roughly doing about 3,500 to 4,000 shipments tracked on a weekly basis, but this is the initial launch. But really, what's going to happen is that over time, this is going to now increase and increase. As we all know, as we're heading into the end of the year, that's obviously with certain holidays and Black Friday, etc. This volume is just going to go up and up, right? And really, what we're doing is we're tracking at a customer order. So every customer that's ordering anything through the e-commerce platform, we are able to track that, and we're doing that invoice reconciliation as well. And whether we do it at an aggregated, what I mean by that is, let's say for a particular, let's say FedEx here, we show them an invoice over the 2 weeks, or if it's everything you've done in 3 weeks or 1 week or just by day. Really, our platform is scalable enough to do that, and we give them that visibility, because some of the different carriers actually invoice on a monthly basis, but we break it down each shipment. And they can always query that, and you can dispute that, you can audit it. That's the power of our platform. And finally, and many people would have read more about this because this has been in production a little bit more, was the TL and LTL carrier network as well. So there's over 70 carriers. Obviously we couldn't fit all 70 on this slide, so we just picked a few. But CN, Bison, Transex, etc. Everyone's onboarded and been using this platform for coming up to 3 years now, which is really amazing. The numbers kind of speak for itself. I think these numbers are also something that many people may have seen through various articles as well. The one really key one is the 1 billion. It's actually over $1 billion in invoices approved and paid all through our platform. So really, this is the area where we've really grown, and this is where we started. But now we have the e-commerce side, we have the crowdsourced partner side as well, and give it a year or so, those numbers will increasingly get higher as well. So just to kind of wrap up real quick, what are the next steps? So if you're looking at this and this sounds great, and you're wondering, how do I get involved? How am I gonna look at DLT Labs? The very first thing is to reach out to us, and you can book a 60-minute discovery session. What we do is that we take a little bit of your time. We kind of understand a little bit about your business, how invoicing is done, how tracking is done, how tracing is done, and some of the pain points as well, some of the users. And what we do out of that is we create what's called a scope document, which would be the next one. What we do is we really want to understand you. We can always provide a demonstration, but what we want to do is spend 60 minutes to understand you and your particular pain points as well. We understand that what we talk today may kind of resonate with you, but there may be certain points that are not part of your pain. And that's kind of why we want that 60-minute discovery session. We create a quick scope document, and we do a platform demonstration where you can kind of see the platform. It's a highly configurable platform, so we can configure that to you and provide you that platform demonstration. Once that's good, we basically, and you're very happy with that, we do the statement of work, where we walk through the commercials, we execute the statement of work, and then essentially we are good to go. We go through our product configuration. Like I said, this is where we now really take your use case, your specific logic that needs to be created in the platform. We do that. That generally takes, anywhere between, depending on how complex it is, 2 to 4 months, essentially. It can be much faster than that as well. That's just a general kind of time frame. And really what we want to do, our end objective is to transform your business and provide that ROI to you so you can realize the value of our platform.
Yeah, thanks, Sheldon. Thanks, Jeff. We have a couple of questions from Chris, if both of you can take it up.
Yeah, Jeff, I can go read them out loud. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so the first one from Chris. Are these deployments in USA as well, or other countries? So basically, yes. So what we are doing right now, we've been focusing on Canada, but we have been expanding into the US as well. And next one, do you plan to enable your private blockchain to eventually reconcile to a public blockchain like EVM in the future? Oh, very good question. This will take us down a blockchain discussion, but really what we've been using private blockchain just because of the base of our clients and because of the need to keep things private within the organization, just at a very high level. So that's really why we've been using it. We primarily use Hyperledger Fabric. That is our preferred blockchain. We are agnostic though. We have an R&D lab that are looking into different types of other blockchains as well. And in the past, what we've also done is bridging, basically. So we have the capabilities of bridging two blockchains, let's say a public to a private to a public. There is that concept as well. So really, it depends on what our customers need for that most part, but we are primarily in enterprise blockchain.
Okay.
There
I have one other question. How can I get this type of blockchain initiative started in my industry? And I guess the way that I would answer that is, as Shaylin had stated in the next steps, the first step really is to book a discovery session. And I mean, if you have a group of folks and companies that are interested in working together on this, then, we can bring them together, share the details, find out exactly what's trying to be accomplished, and then move through the steps that Shaylin had laid out.
Yep. Jeff, we had a question, but I think it's been marked as answered. One sec. I don't think we did answer it. 1 second. There was one from an anonymous. Is DLT working on any banking or payment projects? So very good question. So basically, the answer is yes. Our platform is not just from the freight side. We can also do the payment side. So whether that's actually doing the payment disbursement, we have those capabilities as well. What we work with our clients is to understand, of course, on their side, GLs, mapping to GLs, etc., like that. But we do have that. So while we focus more on the invoice reconciliation, the next step of that in terms of payment reconciliation, the DLT platform is capable of that as well. And we have been looking into that as well.
Great. I have another question here. How does blockchain facilitate and streamline the collection of sustainability and ESG data? And really the way that's done is it will capture all the process transactions that are taking place in your supply chain, whether it be on the freight side or even other functions within your logistics operations. And it will take that information and it will create an immutable record of it. And that record is then available, and all the sustainability that is associated with it on ESG data is available to be summarized in any way that is required, but it's done right from the process rather than being a separate, if you want to call it make work project that requires reconciliation or assumptions and that type of thing, which makes it much more powerful when you're capturing it right from the process.
Perfect. Jeff, there is one more here as well. Ravikash, Jeff pointed out the efficacy of the platform in a regulated environment. Do we have any finance use cases, finance industry to be specific? You want to take that, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll let you talk to the finance side of it. I know in Japan, we're doing work with some of the financial institutions there.
Yep.
I believe when it comes to even home mortgages, it's an application for that.
Yep. Correct. Basically, so that's exactly what I was thinking. That what we've been looking in terms is the mortgage aspect of it, and that's the complete life cycle from the time it's basically applied for one to the time it's issued, so to speak. That is one that we're speaking with a major bank in Japan, and I've recently realized that it's one of the top countries in terms of issuing mortgages as well. So we have been looking into that, and what we're trying to do is expand a little bit more in the finance industry. However, today what we really wanted to focus on was the freight and explaining how we've done things on the freight side.
Great. Another question here. Shaylin, can you explain the differences in how the blockchain is applied for the different freight types that you described?
Yeah, so basically from a blockchain perspective, like I mentioned, that what we're doing right now is focusing on Hyperledger Fabric, which is a completely private blockchain. Our platform sits on top of Hyperledger Fabric, and in between we have a layer of logic basically. We call it ASICs, that's proprietary to us. So our platform is completely configurable, and between that logic allows us to communicate to the chain or not. So now this allows us to set certain permissions, basically to say that what is written to chain and what is not. So for example, a very common example is PII data, personally identifiable information. That is something that you cannot put on blockchain. Why? Because there's certain regulations like GDPR that does not allow you to do so. So this is where we have that layer that essentially kind of filters out. We can set these permissions from the front end so that we are basically just recording to the chain what makes sense for that particular business unit. And this is why we have that discovery session, because what we like to do is advise you how to efficiently use the platform and how to efficiently use blockchain. It's not just that you throw all the data on there. That's not the most efficient way to do it. It really depends on what you're trying to derive from a business value for your ROI. That's a really key aspect of determining how to set up the platform and how to efficiently use a blockchain as well. From a channel perspective, I'll just take 2 seconds to talk about that. We basically use different types of channels on the chain, basically, and this is where different types of users sit, or different groups. I talked about having a network, so let's say a network of carriers. Obviously, it's a permissioned blockchain, and you want to keep data private. You do that through the use of channels as well. So each channel has a particular carrier on there, and therefore data does not flow between channels. This is how we keep it private. It's just essentially, it's impossible for data to be flown like that. We are very, very concerned, and also we focus a lot of our time on data security. That is one of the major things that we have invested a lot of our time into doing so, to make sure that data is secure and private.
Excellent. One more question. What types of reduction in freight invoice disputes can be expected through utilizing the DL freight process? And the simple answer to this, and what we've experienced over the last 3 years, Walmart Canada, when we began, they were experiencing somewhere in the range of 70% of their freight invoices were under dispute on a regular basis, and that number is now below 2%. And so if you look at it from a pure reduction, it's about a 98% reduction that's taken place. So very, very significant. But, once you've created that environment and you're capturing the information, and that, creating that single version of the truth is what allows you to accomplish that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
There is one just came in, Jeff. I'll take it real quick.
Sure.
I know we're going a little bit over time. Can you explain how the business logic is applied for the different freight types you described? So very good. So basically, if you look at a couple of webinars or business casts we did before, we talked about smart contracts. This is really the application of business logic. And it goes back to that 60-minute session that we have. We understand what you're trying to derive from the platform from a business value perspective and an ROI perspective. But essentially what we do is that we set up our platform. It consists of workflows and participants, and the flow of data that they should be able to see and extract from the platform. And we use business logic or smart contracts that we configure right from the front end. We call them expressions in terms of driving that. So whether it be a calculation, a summary of an invoice, looking up, let's say, GPS data and validating it against maybe a particular accessorial that was put into the platform. This is the business logic that's been put into our platform. Right now, what we're using it from a crowdsourced partner side is evaluating individual trips that they do, because obviously they do a various amount of trips within a given time period, let's say a month. And we're allocating, is it the best route they're taking, and what is the cost that's associated to that? The e-commerce side is at a parcel delivery, so how much it costs per parcel. And at the LTL and TL is basically how much an invoice for a particular delivery of movement of goods, whether it be to multiple locations or just one, and then any accessorials that are basically applied to that. We're validating all that.
Excellent.
Right. I think we've run through questions there.
Yeah, no more questions, and I think everyone understands. So anyways, everyone who registered will get a copy of the video recording via YouTube channel. So
Perfect.
in case if anyone has more details or more doubts, feel free to reach out to us via our website, on the link.
All right,
Thanks
great.
everyone. Thanks. Great
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone. Take care. Bye.